Welcome to Baylor. I want to welcome you as a professor, but also as a dad. So today I have my daughter Sarah, who's here. She's an incoming freshman, so it's kind of fun to be able to welcome her. And she's there with her mom, so huge blessing to do that. But I want to start my talk with a lesson that I learned from my son, who is a rising senior at Baylor. So when we talk about why you're meant to be at Baylor, one of the reasons is Baylor will broaden your experiences. And so his freshman year, he decided that over the summer he was going to do a study abroad trip. Highly recommend those if you can do them. He did a study abroad trip in Madrid, Spain. And he was working on honing his Spanish and taking a few classes, had an amazing experience. Well, he happened to be there at a time that coincides with an event that has occurred in Spain for over 500 years in the city of Pamplona. Now, I shared this story last summer. I had to bring it back again because there's so much we can learn from this. So some of you are laughing. You know where this is going. So for over 500 years, thousands of people a year think it's a great idea to get into 20-foot wide cobblestone streets with 12 bulls. They get released every morning at the city walls to run to the bull ring. That's the goal. People run with them for some reason. This is what we've been doing for many, many years. Well, they do this for 8 straight mornings. Did not know that, at 8 a.m. So think of it like this. It's like Mardi Gras all night, and then people run with 12 bulls the next morning. All right? So not a great idea. Well, my wife had planned the trip, and so we were going to view the first run from a 3rd floor balcony overlooking Dead Man's Curve. That's what you're looking at here. It is aptly named. Now, this is your first test at Baylor to see what your reaction is to what you're about to see. Just as a warning, no one dies in this. That's all I can promise you. Parents, be encouraged. Your children are smarter than my son. All right? The reactions I saw in the room were much more appropriate than my son's because at the same time I'm taking this video on my iPhone, my wife is taking this picture. Yeah, that's horrifying, all right? That guy, you can see his legs there, he met 4 bulls. That's 6,000 pounds of bull. He got taken off in a stretcher with blood pouring from his head. I look over at my son. He's 19. I'm hoping that this experience, this picture, this video, what he's just witnessed will penetrate his underdeveloped prefrontal cortex that is common to all 19-year-old males. His only reaction? That was awesome. There's nothing awesome about that at all right? But that was his reaction. So, all of your experiences have expectations that go into them. So after viewing that, my expectations of what the next day might be like were very low. But I was stuck in this dilemma. So as a dad, who I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I will have ever done. Do we do this tomorrow? Or do I say, yeah, okay, I'm gonna do it because maybe if my son starts getting trampled by bulls, I could do something to the bulls to stop them from trampling, or at least drag his legs out from under a bull. So I have very low expectations. For some reason, his expectations are quite high, which reminded me of a lesson that I also learned from our 2 dogs. So this last year, we have Charlie, he's 10 years old, and my wife decided we really need Gus. And so Gus came into the house. You know, 10-year-old dogs aren't really looking for a playmate. So Charlie had some expectations, all right? And when Gus came in the house, this was reality, which led to disappointment, all right? So our happiness is dependent on our expectations. Now, Gus may have had some expectations. For the rest of the family, reality was here. So we have gratitude and happiness. That's where it comes from. Now, returning to the Bulls and back to Charlie, as our expectations decline, here's the good news. The space for disappointment goes down. And the opportunity for gratitude goes up. So as I'm sitting there thinking about what I'm going to do the next day, I have all kinds of room for gratitude. All right? So my message to you as you start Baylor, just lower your expectations. All right? It'll make everything better. All right. So, but here's Ben and I in the street the next morning at 7:56 a.m., 4 minutes before a gun's going to go off to release the Bulls into the streets. Now, I've never been more terrified by anything in my life than hearing 48 hooves on cobblestones coming up behind me around drunk and hungover people who are falling down all around us. Now, just to be clear, Ben and I are completely sober, all right? So you may actually think less of us for doing this without any excuse, but here we are. So it's finally settled into Ben about what's about to happen. Now just look at the adrenaline coursing through his body in this video as I just ask him what he's thinking this morning as we're about 4 minutes away from that gun going off.
Ben, how are you feeling in the streets about 4 minutes away?
Little jittery. It's real now, we're definitely here, but let's see how this goes.
Parents, you understand that smile? There's no happiness there. That is complete resignation that what is about to happen is going to happen. And so we get stuck in this position sometimes. That's one of the more embarrassing moments of my life, that I'm on video about to have Bulls released behind me, but I'm with my son. All right, so now I'll return to that story because there is a, 4 to 5 minutes later, that story will end. But here's the thing. You were at an unambiguously Christian Research One university. There are only 37 private Research One universities in the country. And we are one of the only ones that actively proclaims Christ in what we do. Now, even if you're not a believer, this is still the ideal place for you to be, because at Baylor, we pursue joy fearlessly through truth and love from all different disciplinary perspectives. So we ground everything in truth. Now, the good news about that is that all truth is God's truth. North African Church Father Augustine said this hundreds of years ago. And so here's what I mean by that. In higher ed, if you've been watching any of the news, there's a lot of this, my truth, your truth, their truth. It's like, no, there is capital T truth out there. So another example, I have the best job in the world. So I've been in education now, this is my 29th year. I get to go all over the world and find things that are working that Christians are doing in schools, whatever schools they're called to, and see what works. So last summer, I got to go to Australia, and I brought my family with me. And this is the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And unlike any other bridge that I know of, they let you climb to the top of the bridge. All right, this is way safer than running with the Bulls. I just want to be clear. But they have to harness you in because you're going over traffic and you're hundreds of feet above the harbor. So here's my family with this opera house in the background at the top of the bridge. Now we're harnessed in for a reason, because my truth, their truth, your truth, they're kind of irrelevant at the top of the bridge. If I become unharnessed from that bridge and fall, gravity is going to work on me whether I believe in it or not. I'm either going to end up on the surface of the road or in the harbor, but it's not going to go well, because truth is truth. And we get to lean into that from all these different disciplinary perspectives at Baylor. But ultimately, you can't pursue joy. Joy is different than happiness. Joy is this deep-seated pursuit that comes from truth in love. You can't just pursue truth without relationships. So you matter. So your parents have also made a huge investment in you, and we want you to pursue joy through truth and love, but we also want you to be gainfully employed by the time you're done. All right, now here's the good news. Again, education researcher, so this stuff matters to me. If you graduate from high school, you're doing better than if you didn't. If you graduate from undergrad, this is any undergrad, not just Baylor, and Baylor's way better, so you'll do even better coming out of Baylor. Look, you almost double your income, right? So that's a win. We want you to be gainfully employed. This is a good thing. Now, in the United States, we spend a lot of money to make sure this happens. So I want 3 guesses from around the room. If you can tell me how much we spend on public schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, per year in the United States. So public schools spending K through 12 in the United States. All right, just yell out some numbers. 600 million, I heard. 600 billion, okay, billion. Other guesses? 70 billion. 2 trillion. Okay. The good news is the answer is within the range. 70 billion to 2 trillion. The answer's somewhere in there. Again, nobody has any idea about the numbers this big. So here's what we spent in the most recent year we have data on. $870 billion on public K through 12 education. Now to put that in context, if that were our gross domestic product, our whole economy was what we spent on K through 12 public education, that would make us the 19th largest GDP in the world, just ahead of Switzerland. So we put a lot of money into this to get you here. And that's just on public schools in the United States. Now, our expectations have shifted. In the 1950s, which had many problems, but sociologists have found it was the most grateful decade because they're coming out of the Depression and fighting Nazis. All right, so it's a pretty bleak, again, remember, expectations matter. All right, so here was the reality. The average home had a house, a car, food was 29% of their median household income, and adjusted for inflation, it was $29,000. That was the median household income. Now, that was gratitude for them. All right, now, not everybody had that, and certainly not everybody has that now, but 2024 expectations have gone up because reality has shrunk the space for gratitude, because here's the reality. Our houses are 1/3 larger. Families on average have 2 cars. Food is 13% of our median household income, even with inflation, and on average, the median household income is $70,785. But because that reality is below our expectation, it leads to disappointment. So again, we need to find our source of joy and not base our happiness on those expectations. And so your work that you do, the income you make, while important, can't be everything. So I told you, I taught for 12 years outside of Chicago in Nashville, went to Vanderbilt, the U.S. Department of Ed, went all over the world talking about teaching quality issues, worked with 3 different secretaries of education, but what I love is teaching. So in my office, this is my wall, these are my students, I take pictures of every class, put Post-it notes up of names, prayer requests they have, and then, like Daniel mentioned, we have students over every Sunday for lunch. Even yesterday, it's the middle of the summer, 10 students, we have no children who are actually in town. 10 students just came over for lunch yesterday after church because we're right in between Harris Creek and Baylor. So they come over and they have lunch every Sunday. Now, that's not work for us because I've found my calling, and my calling is not based on happiness. Your calling, my calling, is fueled by joy found in a life lived for others. That's been a huge blessing to have students in our home for 15 years who are a few steps ahead of our kids, and now our kids are catching up. And they're now those students. And so education, teaching, it's the profession that makes all others possible. But I have meaningful work to do every day as I prepare leaders around the world for the work that they're called to do. And it's all done out of God's abundant love. So I do all that out of the overflow of his goodness to me. It's not because I'm good. It's because of what God has done for me, and we just reflect that glory to others. So at the end of the day, joy does not mean freedom from struggle. In fact, the depth of our struggle determines the peak of our joy. The harder we work at something, the more joyful we are when that's completed. So in your time at Baylor, learning will be productive struggle. We do not want to take away your joy by not giving you a chance to struggle well. Because ultimately, joy is not freedom from struggle. Joy is the fuel to struggle well. So how do you do that well with others? You pursue truth with them. You have honest, hard conversations in the classroom and beyond the classroom as you become more of who you were created to be. Now, we know this because over the last 5 years, I got brought in to help start the Baylor Center for School Leadership. I'm only here because a donor said we need to support Christians in school leadership wherever they're called. And so they gave money that endowed the chair that I sit in and funded the center that I started. Now, in the meantime, Baylor alumni, Baylor friends have given us $5 million to support leaders all over the world in all 50 states and 45 countries. Those yellow dots all represent schools and leaders that we've worked with, which conservatively means those leaders work with over 4 million students around the world. And in the last 2 years, these BU are all the places I've gotten to go to support leaders all over the world as we learn from, study, and elevate what they do. So when I say this, it's not just based on my experience at Baylor, but this wouldn't be possible at any other university other than Baylor because it is an unambiguously Christian Research One university. So that gets us back to the bull ring, right? The goal is to get in the ring. For a few minutes, they pen the bulls before they release other bulls. And so I had a chance to get my phone out and videotape the crowd, 20,000 people, including my 2 daughters and wife, who were there waiting to see if we made it into the ring. And we get in, we've got this moment before the other bulls come out, so I just did a quick shot of the ring. Just to be clear, the people in there are cheering for the bulls, not for us. But here we go.
How do you feel, man? Exhilarated. That was insane.
File those 2 words away. Your time at Baylor will be both exhilarating and at times it will feel insane because the struggle is real. All right, but when you come to the back end of that and you get the benefit of the stretching that will happen, it is exhilarating. Which reminded me of this book that Theodore Roosevelt wrote in 1899, which became the basis of his Man in the Arena speech. Seemed appropriate since we were in a bull ring. This is what it is. Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs. Even though checkered by failure, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows neither victory nor defeat. Now, I'm not convinced in 2024 that there is a gray twilight. I think either we're going to reflect God's light to a dark world, or it's just going to be dark. And so ultimately, that's what we're called to. But the good thing is, you have this whole room full of people rooting for you to run well as you pursue joy through truth and love. And so that reminded me of Hebrews 12:1 and 2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles, and run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Now, here's how we do that. We fix our eyes on Christ, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. Because of his love for us, he gives us the chance to run this race, to find joy, to find eternal life. And so I want you all to know that I will be praying for you, whether you're at our house for lunch, you're in my classes, you're just at a game where we're all cheering for the same people, to run well as you pursue joy through truth and love. And I just pray that you have a great week as you begin that run, as you pursue joy through truth and love. Thank you. Have a great week.